It feels good to see the ball go through the net. But I think, every game, regardless, you're making shots, you're not, it feels really, really good to have your teammates behind you.
It feels good to see the ball go through the net. But what happened next would leave 4,000 Atlanta Dream fans in complete silence and rewrite the destiny of an entire franchise forever. When the Indiana Fever stepped onto the court against the Atlanta Dream, no one could have predicted the heart-stopping twist that would decide their fate. For nearly 10 years, Fever fans had waited for a moment to believe in again. Season after season, hope had been crushed, dreams shattered, and playoff runs had become nothing more than distant memories. Just when it seemed this season might slip away like all the others, a player who had struggled all night suddenly rose into basketball immortality. With one daring defensive move, Lexie Hull turned doubt into destiny, silencing an arena packed with hostile fans and breathing life back into a franchise that many had written off for dead. But how did we get here? How did a team that once struck fear into opponents become the league's forgotten franchise? The story begins nearly a decade ago when the Indiana Fever lived in the long shadow of their own glorious history. This was once a franchise built on pure toughness and unbreakable tradition. Their glory years were defined by the legendary Tamika Catchings, a player who embodied everything the Fever stood for. Resilience that couldn't be broken, grit that ran deeper than talent, and an ability to will an entire team into greatness through sheer force of determination. Catchings wasn't just a player. She was the heartbeat of Indiana basketball. Every dive for a loose ball, every clutch shot, every moment when the team needed someone to step up, there she was. But when legends retire, they take something irreplaceable with them. When Catchings stepped away from the game, the foundation she had built began to crack. The dynasty she had single-handedly held together started crumbling, leaving behind a team that had forgotten how to win when it mattered most. What followed was a painful decline that broke the hearts of everyone who remembered the glory days. The Fever slipped into a seemingly endless cycle of disappointment and shattered expectations. Injuries tore through their roster year after year, forcing constant lineup changes that prevented any real chemistry from developing. Young draft picks, some promising but most untested, were thrust into impossible situations, asked to carry the enormous burden of a city's desperate expectations while still learning how to survive at the professional level. Every season began with the same hollow promise of hope, only to collapse under the weight of reality, leaving supporters longing for the return of Indiana's true basketball greatness. Fans who had once packed arenas with thunderous energy found themselves sitting in half-empty stadiums, their hearts heavy from years of waiting for something, anything, to believe in again. The sea of yellow and navy that once represented pure joy had become a painful reminder of how far the franchise had fallen. Perhaps most heartbreaking of all was the fact that an entire generation of young Fever supporters had never witnessed their team win a meaningful playoff series. Their only understanding of Indiana's basketball greatness came from faded highlight reels and stories passed down from older fans. Tales of a time when the Fever were absolutely unshakable. The last time Indiana had advanced this far was all the way back in 2015, when Tamika Catchings was still the beating heart of the team, Natasha Howard was just beginning to make her mark in the league, and Stephanie White was serving her very first stint as head coach. It was a completely different era, full of promise, fight, and the weight of championship dreams that felt within reach. But the years that followed stripped away that sense of inevitability, replacing it with endless rebuilding projects and questions that never seemed to have answers. By 2024, when the Indiana Fever's unexpected playoff run shocked the basketball world, their situation looked more desperate than ever. Their already fragile roster faced devastating setbacks that would have crushed most teams before they even stepped on the court. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation who had electrified the entire league and drawn national attention to women's basketball, was sidelined when they needed her most. Sophie Cunningham, the fiery veteran sharpshooter brought in specifically to provide experience and crucial scoring in moments like these, was unavailable. Young forward Chloe BBY, still trying to find her footing in the professional game, had also joined the growing injury list. Against this backdrop of mounting obstacles, it genuinely seemed like the basketball gods had conspired against Indiana. Yet somehow, in the face of everything working against them, the Fever's collective determination was about to defy every single expectation and prediction. The frustration from earlier games in the series still lingered like a dark cloud over the team. Questionable officiating calls in crucial moments had left players and fans feeling like they were fighting two separate battles, one against their opponents and another against referees who seemed determined to work against them. Now they faced their ultimate test, a decisive road matchup against the Atlanta Dream, a team brimming with confidence and absolutely convinced this was their season to break through. On paper, Indiana had virtually no chance of success. They were shorthanded, emotionally drained from the controversy, and walking into an arena filled with thousands of fans who couldn't wait to watch their playoff dreams die a painful death. Yet it was under these exact circumstances that something truly unforgettable was about to happen. The Fever, tired of waiting for their moment and tired of being underestimated by everyone, reached deep into themselves and found something special. Every setback they had endured, every injury that had disrupted their plans, every moment of doubt and criticism had been building toward this single night. When Game 3 tipped off, the stakes couldn't have been clearer: win or go home. Few phrases in professional sports carry as much emotional weight, and for the Indiana Fever, those words represented far more than just motivation. They were about survival. As they entered their showdown against the Atlanta Dream, the harsh reality was impossible to ignore. They weren't simply underdogs in this matchup. They were a wounded team limping into battle with a roster that looked more like a desperate patchwork crew than a polished playoff contender. What remained was a thin lineup held together not by star power or depth, but by pure heart, unbreakable grit, and an absolutely unshakable belief in one another. The series itself had already taken them on an emotional roller coaster that tested every limit. In Game 1, frustration had boiled over after a string of questionable referee calls and a controversial technical foul assessed to head coach Stephanie White. To the Fever players and fans, it felt like they were battling not just the Dream, but the officials themselves, leaving them seething with determination to prove everyone wrong. Game 2 had brought them to the edge of desperation. With their backs pressed firmly against the wall and elimination staring them in the face, the players embraced a simple but incredibly powerful rallying cry: "We're not going home." Those words weren't just shouted during timeouts or written on locker room whiteboards. They became the heartbeat of everything Indiana did on the court, echoing through every possession, every defensive stand, and every moment when they needed to find something extra. That championship mentality carried them into the decisive Game 3, played in Atlanta's roaring Gateway Center Arena. Nearly 4,000 Dream fans packed the building, their cheers growing louder and more hostile with every Fever mistake or missed shot. The noise was absolutely relentless, creating a suffocating wall of sound specifically designed to rattle Indiana into complete collapse. But instead of shrinking under that overwhelming pressure, the Fever did something remarkable. They leaned directly into the chaos and used it as fuel. Each thunderous roar from the crowd only strengthened their collective resolve. What made this game truly unforgettable wasn't just the impossible circumstances stacked against them. It was how Indiana chose to respond. They refused to play scared basketball. They didn't fold under the crushing weight of pressure and expectation. Instead, they fought with a collective fire that Atlanta simply hadn't prepared for or expected. At the center of Indiana's incredible performance was Kelsey Mitchell, the undisputed heartbeat of the franchise. From the very first possession, she played like every single moment carried the weight of the team's entire history. Mitchell attacked Atlanta's defense with absolutely fearless energy, carving through double teams and refusing to be contained no matter what they threw at her. By halftime, she had already exploded for 19 of her eventual 24 total points, delivering dagger after dagger through contested step-back jumpers, floating shots over taller defenders, and fearless drives straight into the heart of Atlanta's defense. While Mitchell provided the offensive firepower, Aaliyah Boston gave the Fever their unshakable anchor in the paint. Facing the brute strength and intimidating size of Brianna Jones, Boston stood her ground like a veteran, refusing to be moved or intimidated. She battled for every single rebound, orchestrated plays with remarkable court vision, and displayed a level of maturity that seemed impossible for someone her age. Her final stat line of 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists told the story of perfect balance and rock-solid reliability when her team needed it most. But this wasn't just about individual brilliance. This was about a complete team effort where every single player stepped up when it mattered. Odyssey Sims dominated every aspect of the game, reading Atlanta's defensive schemes like an open book and threading passes through impossible windows while contributing 16 points of her own. Natasha Howard epitomized relentless determination, diving fearlessly for loose balls and creating energy whenever the team needed a spark. Then came the moment that would be replayed forever. With less than 30 seconds remaining on the clock, Indiana found themselves trailing by a single point. Their entire season hung by the thinnest possible thread. Kelsey Mitchell, who had carried them all night long, delivered a clutch layup off a perfect feed from Aaliyah Boston that kept their dreams alive. But it wasn't enough. Atlanta still had possession of the basketball and still held the advantage. All they needed was one clean inbound pass, one safe possession, and Indiana's inspiring run would end in devastating heartbreak. But Lexie Hull, who had endured a nightmare shooting performance all night long, was ready for her moment. As the ball left the inbounder's hands, she read the developing play with supernatural instinct, as if she had seen this exact scenario unfold in her dreams. She anticipated the pass perfectly, lunged forward with everything she had, and in one fluid motion that seemed to happen in slow motion, snatched the ball clean out of the air before anyone could react. The arena, which had been deafeningly loud just seconds earlier, fell into complete, stunned silence. Nearly 4,000 Dream fans who had been celebrating what they thought was certain victory suddenly found themselves watching their season slip away in the most crushing way possible. That single steal didn't just shift possession. It flipped the entire game, the series, and quite possibly the trajectory of the entire franchise. In the locker room afterward, emotions erupted without any filter whatsoever. A decade of heartbreak and false hope vanished in an instant. Tears of joy mixed with disbelieving laughter as players realized they had just accomplished something that seemed impossible just hours earlier. Kelsey Mitchell, who had carried the burden of losing seasons for years, finally saw her persistence pay off in the most dramatic way imaginable. Lexie Hull clutched a game ball like it was a priceless treasure, knowing she had just authored the kind of legacy moment that children would reenact in their driveways for generations to come. The Indiana Fever were no longer the forgotten franchise drowning in endless rebuilding. They had rediscovered who they were, and with that discovery came an unshakable belief that anything was possible. This victory belonged to every single person who had refused to give up, and now, for the first time in 10 long years, they weren't chasing memories of the past. They were building something entirely new, a future alive with hope, heart, and unlimited possibility.